Next up is Sam from West 36 Media. Sam is an expert at running low-budget prospecting and retargeting campaigns to achieve maximum ROI. In this talk, he's breaking down his exact step-by-step strategies for testing, prospecting, and retargeting. Sam, the stage is yours.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam Frost and thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to be showing you the low budget prospecting and retargeting campaign structures I have used to scale 4 direct consumer brands, one of which was sold for 8 figures just a couple of years ago. And you can literally copy and paste these strategies and use them in your own businesses or agencies. So before we get into that, just a little bit about myself. As I just said, I'm Sam Frost. I started my career as a marketer almost a decade ago as an affiliate. I launched various companies and projects before helping to launch Look After My Bills, which is a UK-based service that helps people save money on their household bills automatically. I oversaw the company's growth from 0 to 500,000 customers in just over 2 years, and we sold that business, as I said, the one I was referring to before, for 8 figures. I'm now CEO of a company called West 36 Media, and we are a direct-to-consumer brand creation and incubation company, and that is a fancy way of saying we launch and invest in early-stage direct-to-consumer e-commerce brands. And why should you trust me? Well, I think I'm a pretty good marketer. I've spent 50 plus million pounds and sent 500 million marketing emails in the last few years alone. So if you're still interested, in the next 20 plus minutes, these are the things we're going to cover. So I'm going to show you the exact step-by-step strategies for prospecting and retargeting, and also the crucial bit, testing, how to analyze your audience's angles and creatives, really important part. And then the key thing is, once you've got all that lined up, how do you get consistency in your campaigns? Well, I'm going to be showing you a couple of cool tricks that we use to maintain performance as we increase spend. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. And we're going to start with what I regard as probably the most important piece to this puzzle, which is audience testing. So one of the key things that people will tell you about Facebook advertising, and it's partly true, is that you can just go totally broad with your campaign, targeting 18 plus male, female across the whole of the country or the countries that you're targeting in, and Facebook will find your customers. And that is true, and we typically see it work, but only in accounts that already have a decent amount of data in. It's really hard to just launch a brand new account or a brand new brand or business on low budget and use that strategy and have it work first time. So what we found is testing a load of different audiences at low budget can really help you find winners quite rapidly. And then you can use those audiences to scale up, and hopefully eventually you can use open targeting and you're able to scale. So the way that we structure our test campaigns for audience testing is we optimize budgets on an ad set level. So for those of you that don't know, Facebook has 2 ways of allocating budget into your campaigns: CBO, which is campaign budget optimization, and ABO, which is ad set budget optimization. So the real difference is the campaign structure on Facebook is your campaign, your ad sets, and within your ad sets you have ads. If you set a CBO, you're going to let Facebook allocate your budget across the best performing ad sets and ads as it sees fit. With ABO, you are allocating the budget manually across your ad sets. So say you have 5 ad sets, each at £100, you're going to spend £500, but you know for sure each one is going to spend, each of your ad sets is going to spend £100. Whereas if you set the £500 at the campaign level, Facebook might choose to spend £400 on a certain ad set because it thinks it's performing best. But the real reason we're doing this is to test audiences. So by letting Facebook allocate the budget, you don't really have a fair test going on. So the structure is, as I just said, you want to make sure you're setting your budget at the ad set level. And within your campaign, you want maybe 5 to 10 different ad sets. And each one of those is identical apart from the audience. So here on this slide, for example, you see that we had a couple of retargeting audiences, all website visitors, initiate checkout. We had a couple of lookalike audiences. And the ones that I blanked out for this particular store are interest audiences. So for example, if you have a cosmetics brand, you might search for people that are interested in beauty. And the key thing when setting your targeting is you want to turn off detailed target expansion. By doing that, you're forcing Facebook to only find people within that audience you've defined, rather than expanding that if it thinks it can find people who are similar and might convert. And so within each of your ad sets, you want to use the same 3 to 5 ads. Don't switch up the ads, because obviously we want a fair test, so each audience is showing the same ads. And the ads you use depend on where you are in your Facebook advertising journey. If you've only just started, you're obviously going to create new ads. If you have some data in your account, you might choose to use the best performing ads you've seen elsewhere. It doesn't really matter, because we'll come onto the ways that you can analyze its success later on, and it doesn't really depend on the ads. We just want to make sure we've got the same ads in each ad set. And then the key thing is, how do you set budget? Well, the way that we found works well is to set your budget at your target CPA. So for example, in this case, our target CPA is £10. And so for each ad set, we've set a £10 budget. So across, say, 10 ad sets, you'll be spending £100 a day. And the reason for such a low budget is it forces Facebook to aggressively optimize and find people at the cheapest possible cost. And it works really well. And we'll come on to that now. As you can see on this slide, we've run this for a couple of weeks now. And in this case, every single ad set performed really well. And you can see overall we had 170 purchases at £9 CPA, which is actually lower than our target. Now, of course, this is a very low scale, and it wouldn't work if you tried to scale it up, but it just shows this is a really effective way of finding new audiences. And so if we quickly move on, we have creative testing. So how do we go about finding the best graphics or videos or carousel ads or whatever it is that work well? Well, essentially we use the exact same method as we did for ad set audience testing, but we just flip it around. So we have 5 to 10 ad sets in the exact same setup, low budget, probably your target CPA and detailed audience expansion turned off, and one ad in that ad set. So the same audiences all the way through, remember that, and then within those ad sets we have just one ad, and we're testing then the creative rather than having 3 to 5 ads and testing the audience. And so what we like to do here is each campaign has its own theme to it, right? So say we have a campaign with 10 ad sets in it, we don't just chuck a random ad in each ad set. You can do that, and it will probably work, but the thing that we do is, say we've just had a new photo shoot for one of our products, and we've got 10 photos as the output of that. Each ad set will have one of those images to see which one performs best on Facebook. And then the great thing about that is you can then use that learning to define your creative strategy going forward. So say 1 or 2 creatives work really well out of this test, you can then use those creatives and modify them, add text to them, potentially turn them into videos, and suddenly you know what's going to work well out of the photo shoot you've just had done. But you can use it for all sorts of different creative testing, whether it be videos, user-generated content, testimonials, etc. And so the thing that people ask me quite a bit about the strategy is, how do you analyze the results? Because at such a low budget, you're not always going to get purchases, and even if you do, you might only get 1 or 2 purchases, and therefore it becomes difficult to figure out which audience or which creative is your winner. And so this is where we go a bit beyond just results and look at your CPMs and CPCs. Because in the case I showed you here, all the audiences performed pretty well, which is a good problem to have, right? But it means by looking at purchases alone, you're not really going to understand those that are going to perform well at scale. But when you look at CPM and CPC, you'll start to figure out at scale which of those are going to cost more. So in this case here, there is a huge difference in cost between the lowest cost per click and the highest cost per click audience, and same again with the lowest CPM and highest CPM audience. And that will help you define which of these audiences you'll build into your scale campaigns, which we'll come to in a second. And the other thing to think about with the audience and analyzing results is you're potentially going to have a scale issue when you build it into your wider campaigns, because if your top performing campaign or your top performing audience, is a retargeting audience that only has a few thousand people within that audience, at your low budget in this test it's performed well, but you have to understand it's not going to perform that well when you build it out later on. So it really is a judgment call on this piece. You have to look at, well, retargeting has worked quite well, the prospecting interests are much more expensive, but actually they're only, X% more expensive, and at scale I think they'll work a lot better. So this is where you have to take all these factors into account when really understanding what the winner is. So if we move on to the exciting part, right? We've tested our creatives, we've tested our audiences, we know the winning combinations. Let's now build them out into our scale campaigns. And so the way we do it is we build CBOs, so we're optimizing at the campaign level. That allows Facebook to allocate budget wherever it wants, and that really does help if you've chosen a retargeting audience as the winner, or as one of your winners at least, because you want Facebook to be able to allocate X amount of budget here, but when it's kind of hit its maximum for the retargeting audience, it can go and allocate it to your wider audience. So we always suggest mixing prospecting and retargeting for this reason, and we have 2 or 3 ad sets within our CBO, and in this case that you see the results on the right hand side, one of these was a prospecting campaign, an interest-based prospecting campaign, and the second was a retargeting campaign. You could also throw in lookalike audiences into the mix depending on how well they're performing. And then within each of those campaigns, we had 3 to 5 top creatives from our test that we just ran. And so what we do here is we straight away scale up our budgets. So we've set up our ad sets and we've set up our ads on the campaign level. We're setting a budget of maybe £500 to £1,000 a day. You can do lower if your budget or your stock only allows you to be a bit lower than that. But additionally, you can also increase it as time goes on. So say your starting point is £500 a day. If that performs well, we recommend increasing in 20% increments every day in order to avoid resetting the learnings. And just let that run for a period of time, see how it performs. And then you build out new CBO campaigns as you get more results from additional audience and creative tests. And so eventually you might have 5 or 6 CBOs that are performing reasonably well at maybe £500 a day or more, depending on what you can afford. And so over time, you get to a point where out of your 5 CBOs, maybe 3 or 4 audiences are working particularly well and 10 different creatives. And once you know that at scale, you're then able to build out what we call an evergreen CBO. So this is essentially taking our top performing ads and our 3 best audiences from our scale CBOs. And the reason we do that is to consolidate them together and have a really top performing campaign that we can set at either a stable budget consistently, or we can scale to higher budgets than the CBOs we just described allow us to. So for these ones here, we have 3 audiences. One is a totally broad and open targeting campaign. One is our all website visitors retargeting audience, and another is our lookalike audience. And within those, we have some of our best performing ads. I think there's 3 of the same ads in each of those ad sets. And we let that rip. We spend about £1,000 a day on this particular campaign, and we can increase it as we wish. Some of our evergreen CBOs are even able to spend up to £10,000 a day. So they really do work well once you have the learnings. And this is the key issue about CBOs, is people are scared to use them because typically they don't always perform well. but people don't often do the bit that is required beforehand, which is the testing phase, which is so important if you want to get consistency across your campaigns. If you don't do the testing and you're just whacking stuff into a CBO, Facebook doesn't always allocate the budgets as it should, and that will cause problems, mainly performance problems, and people will think that their product doesn't work on Facebook or their brand doesn't work on Facebook, when really it's just a case of testing effectively, and this is what these strategies can help you with. And so one final thing before I say goodbye is creating what we call a bully CBO. And this is really when you're finding that CBOs or your campaigns that have performed well start to taper off, and no matter the amount of audience testing or creative testing you're doing, you can't pull it back. And sometimes you go through these periods. We have them frequently, maybe once a month or once every few months. Typically we see this happens around Black Friday, Cyber Monday time, when competition increases across Facebook, and therefore prices start to increase. So the way that we combat this is by creating what we call the bully campaign, and that essentially sets your campaign budget optimization to a bid cap. And bid cap essentially means that Facebook will aim, as it says here, to get the most purchases without bidding more than X pounds or X dollars for your purchase. So essentially how it's meant to be used is, say your target CPA is £10, you might put your £10 here as a bid control, and Facebook will aim to get as many purchases as it possibly can for that £10. But in this case, we're massively increasing what the CPA target is to 10 times our actual target. And what that allows Facebook to do is go out and outbid every other advertiser on the auction who is targeting the same people as we are, and pop our ads in front of them. And so you might be worried, oh, well, am I going to be paying £100 per customer? Typically, no, you don't. It kind of brings it down to quite close to what your target CPA is. In this case, we had a £100 target, and we were actually paying £13 per purchase. And so it's £3 higher than what we want to, but actually in a period of time where we've got quite poor performance across the rest of our ads, we'd take £13 per purchase. And so if you set this up in the exact same way as you would set up your classic CBOs, as we just went through, except changing the bid control, that's how you can avoid lulls in performance. So really that are the key strategies. I hope you can literally copy and paste those and take them away and use them in your own business. I really hope this has been helpful, the last 20 minutes that you've spent with me, and please let me know how it goes, and good luck with your advertising. Bye.